manifestation like the one, this one on December the 10th, is therefore of particular importance, and I express the hope that its proceedings will be given the widest possible publicity in our countries. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the message from Dr. London. The second of my duties is actually a self-imposed one. I shall make the shortest speech of this afternoon and then introduce my friend George London. On the way here, I read a letter in this morning's Daily Telegraph from a certain naval person. No, why should I be secret about it? Admiral Sir James Everley, who is the head of an organization usually known as Chatham House, and who is telling us basically that we must be nice to Mr. London. Now, I spent part of this morning doing something which I regard as a professional duty every time the president, the new president of the Soviet Union opens his mouth, namely to read the BBC's full account of what he actually said, because it isn't necessary to say it appears in the newspapers. And I found a passage to which I draw your attention, and in particular of my friend Vladimir Bukovsky. There are now no people in our country in places of imprisonment sentenced for their political or religious convictions. That is a direct quotation. Now, of course, it depends on how you define places of imprisonment. Do they include psychiatric hospitals? Do they include the Gulag? He doesn't actually say. But that is what he said. Now, that is, by any definition, a lie. And I therefore think that we have to treat such features, even with the very real concessions that he is making in the sphere of disarmament and reducing the Soviet presence in Eastern Europe, with all due caution. I think if we are to help Mr. Gorbachev, we must be very careful that we don't fill the gap created by the Soviet's own system. Because what has happened, really, to summarize it in one sentence, is that after 70 years of Soviet communism, the Soviet regime cannot afford either socialism or its empire. Let us not fill the gap and make it possible for them to continue without reducing their defense budget and without reducing the enormous but unstated sums that go to the International Department, to the KGB, to the PRU, and so forth. That is my speech now. I'm going to call upon my old friend, George Urban, whom I've known, I think, for 20 or 25 years. Is it 25 years? I can't remember. But everybody knows that I'm not the most modest of men, but I have to say that George Urban knows more about communism than I do. And he is, in my view, the world's outstanding political interviewer, and his interviews have appeared from time to time. There's one in the current issue of Encounter with Vila Vangelis. And of course, as Frederick Bennett has said, he has been, until recently, the director of Radio Free Europe, and he will give us a factual analysis of what the situation now really is in that part of the world.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. Chairman, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As we approach the end of the year, of the decade, and of the century, it is increasingly clear to me that the focus of European identification is shifting, and has indeed shifted, to Eastern and Central Europe. It is our friends and brothers in Central and Eastern Europe who are now the spiritual motors of a united and democratic Europe. They are so because they know it in their bones that by history, culture, and religion, they belong to the European family of nations, that they share our values, our tacit assumptions, and our ways of doing things. But they also know another thing. They know that for 40 or more years, they've been cut off from their roots, that they've been made to think and feel in terms of an imposed alien ideology, and that their return to a civilized sense of nationhood, and indeed to a state of sanity and inner peace, absolutely demands their reintegration in the European community of nations and ideas. It is in the small nations of Europe that the big ideas of Europe are being born once again. It is they who have suffered most, and it is from them that we can learn most. I salute our friends in Poland, Czechia, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, the Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states as fresh sources of European idealism and fresh interpreters of what our civilization is about and should be about. But the reviving Europeanism of East and Central Europe is only one element in the present unraveling, if you call it destruction, self-destruction of the Soviet Empire. There is also a realization that the reassertion of independence and the rebirth of nationhood require cool heads and a fine appreciation of what is possible. Those shining examples of heroism and self-sacrifice that tens of thousands of young Hungarians gave the world in 1956 are enshrined in the collective memory of mankind, as surely as the funeral oration of Pericles and the American Declaration of Independence. But better than dying for liberty is living for liberty. The nations of Central and Eastern Europe are tired, absolutely tired of the praise lavished on their dead sons and daughters by an admiring but inactive Western world. They are tired of being remembered in the obituary columns of history. The next phase in East and Central Europe's struggle for a new deal requires, therefore, to my mind, a different sort of sacrifice. It requires the non-violent assertion of national identity, a cool and masterly neglect of the imported ideology, and the isolation of the institutions and instruments of power, as well as those of the power holders. It requires, in other words, a salami tactics in reverse, whereby bit by bit the mendacity, the coercion, and moral bankruptcy of the Marxist-Leninist system are neutralized and eliminated. Now, Mr. Chairman, this is no idle program for an imaginary future. It is happening in some of our countries, not all, as Dr. Lund said, not all, in some of our countries, right now. In Poland and Hungary, civil society has already assumed a life of its own. Alternative ways of thinking and feeling and being have reasserted themselves, making it for the untrained eye and ear hard to believe that Hungarians and Poles have in fact spent many bitter years in the pressure chambers of Stalinism. Institutionalization is on its way, with clubs, unions, newspapers, informal associations of every kind, and even political parties claiming a place under the sun and under the existing constitutions. That's a remarkable fact about it, even under the existing constitutions. Nor are these expressions of a mindless nationalism, as it has often been alleged by our press in Britain and America and elsewhere. In Poland and Hungary, and in Czechoslovakia too, although to a smaller extent, the spirit of patriotic awakening goes hand in hand with the quest for representative government and individual liberty, exactly as it did at the time of the 1848-49 revolutions. In Czechoslovakia, we can sense a sweep of a new, widely shared demand for religious freedom. The quest for a return to the reform communism of 1968 is weak or dead. The demand for a return to the heritage of Thomas Masaryk is strong and growing. But the most remarkable notes of evolution within Mr. Gorbachev's revolution, as he calls it, are the Baltic states. It is there that the spirit of national identity and the will to be counted among the free and democratic nations of Europe has suddenly and spectacularly, miraculously, I would say, burst into flower. Their witness is important for all of us, because it does show that the decimation and worse of the peoples of these countries in 1940 and again in 1949 has not turned them into Soviet men and has not reduced them to putty in the hands of totalitarian authority. The British, French, and American non-recognition of the incorporation of the Baltic states in the Soviet Union has now shown itself to be a realistic recognition of what Estonians, Latvians, and Lithuanians really feel. It should be freshly endorsed by our governments. But, Mr. Chairman, there is a question mark over some of these considerations. Men of goodwill and intelligence tend to ask us, but doesn't the revival of national consciousness and independence in the glacis of the Soviet Empire threaten to upset the existing and rather stable state of East-West relations? Is the growth of insubordination in Central and Eastern Europe just as unwelcome to our own governments as it is to the Kremlin and the local holders of power? Doesn't the peace of the world demand a strong center in Moscow so that those traditionally turbulent races in the peripheries are held down? And Western foreign ministries don't have to bother their heads with the history of Serbs and Croats and Lithuanians and Ukrainians, obscure people of whom we know nothing. I feel, Mr. Chairman, that we must answer these questions, these crucial questions, with an unequivocal no. The source of instability in Europe is the Soviet occupation and domination of East and Central Europe.
Here, here.
And not the East and Central European nations' will to end that domination. Berlin in 1953, Poznan and also in 1956, Hungary in 1956, Czechoslovakia in 1968, Poland again almost continuously since the late 1970s, and now the Baltic states show the scale and enduring nature of that instability. It will not go away unless East and Central Europe are completely reordered. have, I think, reached the point. It has been put there by history. Is Mr. Gorbachev acting as insufficient midwife? We can't take that away from him. Finally, we must get our priorities right. The future of Angola, Cuba, Namibia, and Cambodia may be important Western interests. But I venture to suggest that the fate of our fellow Europeans in Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, the Baltic republics, Ukraine, carries much greater urgency and should be much closer to our hearts.
Here, all this way, and drive all the way back in order to have a few moments with us and do it with real delight as far as I can see from the first moment that I asked him to do so. After that, I shall ask a very honoured guest here tonight, Mr. Bukowski, who's come even further to be with us, which is from the other side of the Atlantic. And that, I think, sets the record for today in distances travelled in order to talk to us. Before doing so, I've had a note handed to me that the band, which are not here now, played the present Romanian national anthem, which is apparently, and I'm no musician, my repertoire is God Save the Queen and the Volga Boat Song. But apparently it was the wrong national anthem. I apologize for that. If it is susceptibilities, I can only say that the only band music available, I don't think we can make all our bandsmen into politicians, and they did their best, if I may say so, to my Romanian friends to pay tribute to them. Now, Julian, I've got the greatest faith in you and a great deal of gratitude to you for coming up today here to us. I would now like you to address this audience, which I can see and find is as big as I promised you it would be, and also as enthusiastic as I think you'll find it.
My friends and fellow Europeans, I'm very honored, Freddie, that you should ask me to address this great audience today. Only last week, you celebrated your 70th birthday. And were kind enough to suggest that I should speak on that occasion. I was in Washington and couldn't do so. But before I say anything else, I want to salute the work you have done over long years for the cause of freedom, and not least for the cause of Europe's freedom. I think you and your colleagues have been very fortunate in the timing of this meeting. Coming so soon after Mr. Gorbachev's speech at the United Nations, which has put the question of Central and Eastern Europe squarely on the agenda. His speech, as Bradford has suggested, and Dr. Lutz has suggested, will no doubt warm up illusions in Western Europe. My own conscience is that it will be read in Eastern Europe as a sign of weakness. And the game, the name of the game at the moment is power. Yes, Central and Eastern Europe is now on the agenda. It has been a long month from the failure of the Allies in World War I to support the Russian government that wanted to continue in the war on our side, to the above all, from the weakness of democratic public opinion in the West. Munich and Yalta are good examples. And yet that faith, I think, is justified and will be seen to be justified. But it has been a long march. After the war, there was the Stalin occupation of Eastern Europe, broken on the walls of Greece and of the Berlin Sea. Well, then they went on a strategy of indirect attack. I see it is now fashionable to talk about the Brezhnev period as one of stagnation. This is not how I see it. He was determined to put his hands, as he claimed in a speech in 1976, on the mineral resources of southern Africa and the oil of the Gulf. And he went a long way towards achieving that aim. But three things have broken the second offensive as they broke the first. Yes, weapons. The nuclear power of the West. Another little weapon, the Stinger, which made it possible for the resistance movements of Afghanistan and Angola to throw back overwhelming occupying power. But above all, the invincible spirit of the people of the occupied countries in Europe and outside, which has shown that no amount of totalitarian repression, whether over 70 years in the Soviet Union, or over 40 years in Europe, or over a shorter period outside Europe, can suppress and prevent the continuation of individual liberty, of a wish for national independence and religious my friends on the left wing of the Labour Party and the family of Ceausescu and Kim Il-sung. Otherwise, there is nobody who believes anymore. And when faith dies, the body dies in due course. Well, it may take time. There will still be dramatic convulsion. And we should be very foolish if we lowered our guard in any way in anticipation of the demise of the system. We have to match their strength with our strength, and perhaps even rather more. We have to insist that they go through with the withdrawal from Afghanistan and Angola. We have to raise new questions. When you look at the balance between NATO and the Warsaw Pact, the question arises immediately, what are Red Army troops doing in Hungary? They have no frontier with NATO. What are they doing? So before we even begin to discuss reduction of conventional forces between NATO and the Warsaw Pact, we ought to say, what are these forces in Hungary for? We all know very well why they were sent there, and why they're there still in 46. And he was always clear in his mind that Europe was not going to be simply a union of Western Europe, but that was why he insisted that empty chairs should be set up at the Congress of The Hague, so that one day the representatives of the ancient and famous nations of Europe could take their place there in freedom. Now that must remain our goal and our wish. Our goal and our wish, because as Europeans, we see the whole of the European family as our partners and colleagues. And therefore, one of the reasons that we in Britain are not what do I call strong federalists is we want to have a system that is open to our friends to join. The Austrians discussed it. To my surprise, I find that Finland talking about. Does this put a new interpretation of the term Finlandization? Would it be the beginning of Finlandization in reverse? And if Austria was to join, the whole Danube Valley would be magnetized by the development. Whatever their intentions, the Soviet Union are in no position to relieve the poverty of West or Eastern Europe. Perhaps the European community could help in this. It is not for us to say how Eastern Europe should evolve. The peoples of Eastern Europe will decide it themselves. But it is for us to make available help from the European Union. It is for us to avoid foolish loans or credits which would perpetuate the present Soviet empire. I cannot tell you what the time scale of the changes will be. We are in a season when darkness comes in. But that there will be a dawn, I have no doubt. It may take time. On the other hand, in history, the great changes, like avalanches and landslides, often take place suddenly and unexpectedly. We must prepare for the coming hour.
Our next speaker is one who needs barely any introduction, Vladimir Bukovsky. I well remember when he first came to this country with the grooves in his wrists from the handcuffs, with his hair shaved down to a millimeter against the lice. He spent 12 years of his life in the Gulag and in psychiatric prisons, which in effect are madhouses for the sane. He wrote that remarkable book, To Build a Castle. He has exhibited refulgent courage, and we are delighted and honoured that he should have come all this long way to address this great meeting. Mr. Vladimir Bukovsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's only appropriate that we launch the European Freedom Campaign this year, when we also commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Munich Accord, Munich Agreement. And looking back into the dark past, we indeed have some cause for cautious optimism. Because not only the agreement, the culmination of the infamous policy of appeasement, paved the way to the World War II, not an insignificant event in itself, but it also was the lowest mark of European morale. When it was deemed by democracy as appropriate to sacrifice others and freedom of others in order to reduce risk for themselves. Recently, looking through the books of history, I found a quotation which belongs to the Prime Minister of the day. who said how horrible, fantastic, incredible it is that we should be digging trenches and trying on gas masks here because of a quarrel in a faraway country between people of whom we know nothing. And that was said about Czechoslovakia. Surely, if compared with that time, our time represents a ray of hope. We all know what followed. We know that appeasement was not the last period of immunity. We know that it followed and developed much further. And the Yalta Agreement, which already was mentioned here, and forcible extradition of millions of Cossacks and Russians to Stalin was another step of appeasement. But today, when we look at that, we indeed can notice a great improvement, a certain recovery of our values, a certain recovery of our morale. I remember when I just came 12 years ago from the Soviet Union. Here in Europe, only Maoists and Trotskyists were not afraid of being anti-Soviet, and even they for a wrong reason. I also remember, as Norris quite vividly reminded you my first arrival to London, that at that occasion I was invited to address a dinner of a group of conservative party, among whom Margaret Thatcher was supposed to be present, at that time newly elected leader of opposition. And my God, I was viciously attacked in the British press for associating myself with the lunatic right-wing conservatives, and so on. Well, we can see that now that lunatic right-wing conservatives represent the mainstream of British and even world political thinking. At that time, we remember it was still a shameful but common business when the democratic governments would quite willingly and happily negotiate with terrorists and give in to their demands. Some still do, but at least they are obliged to do it in secrecy. But when it comes to the surface, it becomes a public scandal. Clearly, we can say that in the few past years, we did witness a revival. When Europe somehow started to recover from its post-war syndrome, while Americans started to recover from its post-Vietnam War syndrome. We've observed, we've seen the liberation of Grenada, we've seen a recovery of the meaning of the word solidarity, which we suddenly heard again, but in a new context. But nowhere this recovery is so obvious as it is in the Soviet Union, and so spectacular as it is in the Soviet Union. It gives me a certain pleasure to hear them, to repeat almost word by word what we used to say 25 years ago and all these years, and for which we were arrested and sent to lunatic asylums. The very word blasphemy, for which at one point I was locked into the psychiatric hospital, became the official policy of the Soviet Union. As official Soviet press today does not mention the word communism anymore. They speak about some socialism, and they insist it is synonymous with the market economy. Quite recently, a leading Soviet economist was at the conference in Spain, and he was very much attacked by his left-wing European colleagues for endorsing and supporting the British government's policy of privatization of previously nationalized enterprises. This faithful son of the Communist Party was called reactionary, and in reply said that the European left is depressingly out of date. You can say that. It came to a point when even Lenin disappeared from his tomb in the Red Square. That created a sensation, and the team of KGB duly searched among the pillows and curtains, and finally found a very small note saying, "Go to Zurich. few days, and I was amazed at the degree of goodwill and ignorance which was displayed by the Americans on that occasion. At one point, the national networks and television networks were calling him the leader of world's community. I must say, if that is so, I would rather like to find him on the globe. And another statement in the Western press called current Soviet situation Gorbachev's imperfect democracy. I wonder, would they apply the same description to South Africa? Indeed, it comes to ridiculous situations when just because of a certain readjustment, a certain changes necessary and forced as are the poor performance of Soviet economy, the Soviet leaders had to give people what they were demanding for decades. We suddenly applaud to the leaders and not to the people. Would we really consider organizing a human rights conference in Johannesburg or Cape Town? I remember another parallel which puzzled me and showed me a degree of that unwillingness to be thrilled by the Soviet new leaders. When Amalgam Marcos, the wife of former Philippine president, was disclosed to have 3,000 shoes that shocked the world. How could she have 3,000 shoes when people in the Philippines are poor and hungry? But when Raisa Gorbachev goes in Manhattan, in meme code, flashes around American Express, the whole world is thrilled. Isn't she cute? She buys only the best of the But if it was only the popular manifestation of ignorance, it should not be worthy of so much of a speech. Unfortunately, this goodwill and euphoria is translated into billions of dollars. It's translated into very dangerous arms control agreements which are imposed on the West, which makes this war even more dangerous. Many of you might know that the Soviet Union, as of today, borrows from the West at a rate of $700 million a month. That is according to the estimates of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. All of you, I'm sure, have noticed that during the recent trip to Soviet Union, German Chancellor Helmut Kohl brought another Christmas present of 14 billion Deutsche Marks. It is also discussed quite widely in Europe that a new Marshall Plan should be organized in order to help poor communist regimes in Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. Is it just a manifestation of greed, as some people would suggest, or is it something deeper? Unfortunately, I think it is something more dangerous. I think it is all disease, of which 50 years anniversary we commemorate this year. Because behind all this optimistic and euphoric facade, there is a plain and common fear lurking. Don't make Soviets desperate. An image of a mortally wounded beast. Its back to the wall, irrational and murderous out of desperation, is so powerful that it paralyzes our ability to think and obliterates our memory. We forget that his wounds are self-inflicted. We forget that his nature is still the same, wounded or not. In short, it is a policy of appeasement, plain and simple. It is not really so difficult to understand, even for someone totally unfamiliar with the Soviet system, that Lithuanian national flag was finally raised in Vilnius this year, not because of a nice leadership and nice variety of communists in Germany, but because of thousands of those young men who each year would risk their freedom and lives to raise that flag.
This, I was going to see art myself with you, but I've sent you someone far more beautiful to see art. Look after your needs on the way. The Ukrainians who entertained us with their national anthem so emotionally a short time ago, it is now their turn, and we have someone else who has crossed the Atlantic to come to be with us in the person of Mr. Torello. He doesn't, unfortunately, speak English, so I think he's just going to say hello. And then Mr. Krolak, if he comes forward, is going to read the speech which he has made and written. So, Mr. Krolak, will you come forward with your Ukrainian colleague and take my place? Mr. Torello, sotto voce, Mr. the other way around, Mr. Krolak.
Перед тим, як почати зачитаю мою промову, я хочу сказати, що рівно о 2-й годині у Львові відбулася грандіозна демонстрація в знак протесту на арешт 3 грудня арештованого у Львові Степана Хмару, і він нині перебуває у Львівській тюрмі. З 14 районів України стягнуто війська КГБ, міліції, арештовані люди, які повинні були вести демонстрації, але все-таки демонстрація відбулася, і рівно о 2-й годині люди зійшлись. А тепер...
Before I start, I'd just like to say that today at 2 o'clock in Lvov there was a mass demonstration, a protest today on Human Rights Day, and there was people also protested at the arrest of Stefan Chmara, who was arrested on the 3rd of December, and this demonstration was violently attacked by the KGB and the Soviet militia.
Із дня арешту Степан Хмара об'явив голодівку.
From the day of Stefan Chmara's arrest, he began a hunger strike. And now I'll read Mr. Torello's short speech. Dear friends, glory be to Jesus Christ. It is already some years that the two words perestroika and glasnost are bandied about in the world press. The leaders of the USSR, the leader of the USSR, Gorbachev, is depicted as a new messiah by news writers, by radio and television, almost a savior for our times. But they say little about what stands behind the current new developments in the USSR and where the Communist Party, with Gorbachev at its head, is heading. The people, it would seem, entranced, are taking in the empty phrases and fairy tales about the wise and good Gorbachev. They forget, nonetheless, that peace and understanding among the nations will bring us justice, for without justice there can be no peace. Justice built upon truth was revealed to us by Jesus Christ himself, the peace of Christ in the kingdom of Christ. Are the rulers of the USSR, a new name for the old Russian Empire, building their life among nations upon the truths revealed by God? Are they moving towards justice? All the perestroika of Gorbachevites, the opening of new churches, the extension of the authority of the Russian Orthodox Church, the release of a few Christian prisoners because of pressure from the Western press, the permission of individuals to leave the USSR are forced concessions of the Communist Party. But no one pays attention to the fact that paragraph 227 about the teaching of religion to children and paragraph 209 have not been eliminated from the criminal code, and that the prohibitions about the existence and the legal activity of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Ukrainian Catholic Church continue to exist. We are accused of nationalism, as if a non-national church could exist for the benefit of the nation. The greatest sin is to remain silent about sin. In other words, to remain silent about crime. If today's Western world would abide by the general Christian principles of morality and justice, then no Gorbachev could mesmerize the world with his experiments. Why should perestroika and the renewal of the communist regime take place at the price of the Christian laborer of the Western world? The world forgets the words of the Holy Gospel. If it is not God who builds, then the laborer builds in vain. Only yesterday, still a prisoner of the death camps in Perm and Moldavia, I and my friends were being destroyed by those same party bureaucrats who are now declaiming about glasnost and perestroika. The fact that I am free and here among you is no merit of theirs. But no one stops to consider the fact that the system of the prison camps in the USSR continue to exist. The Russians continue as the ruling nation, led by a select communist race, a new class of subjugators. And it is precisely under the appearances of glasnost and perestroika that Gorbachev is centralizing the state in his own hands at an increasing pace in the prison of the nations of the USSR. The mentality of the Western countries is loyal and inactive in regards to Russian occupation, which destroyed and continues to destroy entire peoples and nations in line with their own chauvinistic ambitions. It is the end of the 20th century, and Ukrainians, as in the first centuries of our era, must seek refuge in the forests in order to pray to God. The Russian invader is destroying our history, language, culture, and when we call out to battle, we are accused of being terrorists, and they accuse us of a lack of democratic spirit. And who is saying this? Those who are continuing their cynical slaughter of human sacrifices and brazenly demand silence about their anti-Christian deeds from the world opinion. Can the people of England, if they were overrun by any alien occupant, sit calmly on their hands and not conduct an impassioned defense against a foreign aggressor? No one doubts that the British would defend themselves. Why then do they deny this to us Ukrainians? Why does the world remain silent when we are struggling for our and your freedom? The issue today is the reconstruction of a Christian society which is being destroyed these last 70 years by anti-Christian laicism. Life has shown that a true Christian is the best citizen who loves his native land and is ready to defend it. I suffered for 23 years in the Russian prison camps and jails, and I shall never forget them, nor shall I ever cease in my struggle for the freedom of my nation, or shall I give up the idea being able to live freely and to have my own country. This right has been given us by God himself. The communists of Moscow have established an unheard of slavery in Ukraine. In the 70 years of their rule, the communist mafia has defamed and destroyed everything that had given strength to our national entity. Red Russia has deliberately destroyed our national church life, knowing that our strength is in our church. The Moscow invaders are now conducting a mad campaign against our national churches, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Ukrainian Catholic Church, against our ancient traditional Christianity. The government of Gorbachev is forcibly tearing down the crosses from our churches and replacing them with the Muscovite unorthodox crosses. We are forcibly driven into Muscovite so-called Orthodox churches, and they are calling this perestroika before the West. And in the West, the Muscovites are doing their utmost to conceal the truth from the free peoples of the Western world. The tragedy of 1933 is repeating itself, when 11 million Ukrainians were destroyed by the hunger conspired by the